Hey everyone, welcome to In Between. Today I'm joined by Jared Bush and Byron Howard, who are the directors of ENCANTO. It was great to talk to you guys again. It's been a while.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, how's it going? Good to see you.
Fond memories. Remember that time 6 minutes ago
when we changed the Zoom call? That was great.
Our house, our casita, came to life with magic.
Hola, casita.
Floors! Drawers! Let's go! In time, every member of our family
Cecilia, up top!
was given their own magical gift.
I understand you.
But ENCANTO it's very different to the kind of more traditional Disney animation where they're kind of based on fairy tales. This feels a lot more theatrical. You know, it's a very specific one kind of set the whole time. You're in the house. You've got a huge cast of key characters across 3 different generations. You know, the traditional tropes aren't really there. There's a very complex inner journey. So how did you get there from previous films to now? Like, what caused this madness?
The theatrical thing was very intentional, I have to say. Like Jared and I, a little more than 5 years ago, started talking about doing another movie together because we had done Zootopia together, and we loved working with each other. We're both musicians from way back. We grew up as trombonists. Yes, we know that is so cool, and I almost hesitate to bring it up because you'll think we're too cool.
That's what the problem will be.
That's what. Yes, that's actually it's never the problem. And then Jared was having this really great experience on Moana with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and that was a new relationship which was really working. And if you can believe it or not, before Lin was hired onto Moana, he was a little bit of an unknown. It was like Hamilton had not come out yet, like he had done In the Heights years ago. But when Ron and John brought him onto Moana, it was like, who is this young whippersnapper? This guy, he's like a up and comer. And then the world changed. But then, then we just sort of like we started talking to Lin on day one, which is really unusual. We usually don't get our songwriters until very late in the game. And this made a huge difference. To your point, like we wanted to lean into the theatricality. We knew it would be largely in one house, albeit a house that had infinite rooms in it, and also had a personality that could act. But we were thinking theater all the way through. And I think because Lin is such an expert on all of that, we really leaned on him as been through the whole process. Anything you want to add to that, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting to your point about it being in one location with this larger cast, that was a great lesson learned on Moana. Originally, she had like 9 brothers, and it was like this giant family is so fun. And then she got on a boat and left, and you didn't see them. So it was like, that's a lot of work to build that many humans that you never see. And we knew that going into this. So we said, we want this to be a story about an extended family. We can't leave their home. If we want them to be a part of this story, then we need to find a way that home is really the core of where this story is set. And so that as much as possible, Mirabel is bumping into and interacting with all these members of her family as much as possible, it was a great limitation for us because it wasn't a quest. We weren't going on this crazy journey. So how do you have all these interactions? And every interaction she has an effect. And so you also have to do all that math with these characters around. And it felt very true to family, which was really, really fun.
I mean, it's good that you say true to family because it really, you know, people say, you know, this animated film is a family film. This is really a literal family film, you know, like in every sense of the word. It's made about their family in their family home. And I know you guys made this during the pandemic, like, so everyone else was in their home at the same time, you know. There's this really interesting tweet I saw, and I think I'd like to share it with you guys. So they basically say that I feel like ENCANTO was so vastly improved by the animators working from home. Like their reference wasn't just their actors, the reference was their own lives, their own family dynamics, and something about ENCANTO then felt so authentic. Do you feel that like the animators being at home and around their families resulted in a different kind of performance you might not have gotten in the studio?
It was very true that for family drama was on display like throughout the entire 2 years. Like if you needed to see kids running through in their underwear or like arguments or messy houses where no one has time to do any laundry or people.
He's talking about me on all of those things.
Like when we talk about that, it is absolutely true. It was the most bizarre experience in 2 years ago ish when we went home we were like, oh, it'll be a week. It'll be 2 weeks. And we thought we'll get used to the Zoom thing, but we don't have to get too used to it. But then it really took over absolutely everything. So literally Jared and I were doing the movie with Charisse from our respective homes, and everybody was, all the hundreds of people were doing it. But we talked about this before. We think it brought us all closer in a weird way, because in interacting with people at work, you never see that. You barely get to meet their spouses or their kids, rarely, maybe on Bring Your Kids to Work Day or some special event outside of the studio, but we're working all the time. And so this was a real illuminating look into people's real lives. And I think we all got a lot more honest with each other.
I think so. And, one of the things we talk about is what you present to the world typically and what's really going on behind the scenes. And over the course of those 2 years of making this thing from home, you could actually watch that progression happen, where people had their backgrounds on, you couldn't see their lives. And then slowly it was like, you're just going to see this stuff and I can't avoid it. It was really cool, actually. So I think there is something, it obviously could never predicted it, but I think there is something about we were living out some of the themes of the movie that I definitely think had a big effect.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. It's very interesting. I think you said before that like figuring out the choreography of all those characters must have been insane. Like how they move through the house, where they pop up at different story beats, but then also the dance choreography and the choreography of that camera then as well, laying it all out. Could you talk a bit about that roller coaster? I'm sure.
I mean, Jared, do you want to talk about sort of the complexity of balancing that with Charisse and the script and Chuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to how is that all possible is really just by surrounding yourselves with geniuses that can figure out some of these very difficult things. We have to say, like, our smartest move on this film was bringing in Charisse as a partner to us, as both a co-writer and co-director, and really thinking through these character dynamics. I'd say that the tricky thing is that the whole point of the story is that each of these characters is kind of going through their own journey, and they have their own life, and these events are affecting people differently, and you're starting to see different parts of them. So you can't cheat that psychology. So in every single scene, even if you're another member of the family isn't even talking, we have to emotionally know where their head's at. And so there's a reason that person would be in that place. And then what are they feeling? And so that math had to work out. That took a lot of trial and error. And then on top of that, throughout the screening process, people fell in love with certain characters. So Antonio is a good example of this. In early versions, he kind of disappeared from the second half of the movie, and people were like, where is Antonio? Like, I got to see him and I fell in love with him. Where is he? So we actually made this big change where he shows up at the midpoint to say to Mirabel and Bruno, hey, you can use my room. That was invented because we wanted to see more of him. Initially, Mirabel and Bruno went back to Bruno's busted up room, and you saw no Antonio there. But there's moments like that where sometimes as you're moving through, the characters start to say what they want, or you start to realize what's popping, and you have to make adjustments accordingly. But that was really a very, very fun, difficult little puzzle to kind of figure out. And then maybe, Byron, you can talk about, we have amazing choreographers, and our cinematographers are unbelievable, and they had to do so much work. But maybe you want to get into that. And
the choreography between you guys on this interview, insane.
It's the handoff. Well, yeah. It's like a little bunt and a volley. We kind of catch it. Yeah, so it's good.
We've known each other a long time.
It's true. We have a good rhythm. But choreography, both in like character blocking as they're moving through the house and the shots, is one thing, and then choreography of the songs is totally another. From our Colombian trust, they said this house has to feel full. It can't feel like this big empty space. It's constantly full of people, not just your immediate family, but people from your neighbors and people or people are all over to help cook for the evening's events and stuff. So there's that scene where Mirabel has like that huge basket of junk she's gotten from town, and she's struggling to go in. And there are T-play players and people moving benches, and Luisa's got barrels, and Camilo's up there kind of decorating Antonio's room with a guy from the village. So that kind of chaos, it doesn't come for free, especially animation. It's very complicated to do, but we have to hand it to our layout department. Nathan Warner's our brilliant head of layout, and he and his team did an incredible job both on that and also knowing that this was going to be a musical, like capital M musical. Jared and I and Charisse really wanted to lean into choreography, like just embrace that, especially for numbers like, we don't talk about Bruno, which is probably the most theatrical of all of, well, I mean, there are a lot of them. They're in different ways. They're very different. But as far as like an ensemble, being together, that one really stands out. And the fact that there's very specific Colombian dancing going on from each set of characters that pops in. We really needed Kai Martinez and Jamal Sims, our choreographers, to really work with us. And Kai was there every week with the animators because she's Colombian herself. And so she knows physically how those dance moves are supposed to feel. So she could work on like a microscopic level with the animators, which they loved. Wow. Because they're like sponges. They want this stuff. And so I think that's why the synergy of what that number is really comes across. Not just great music, not just great vocal performances, but an amazing choreography and animation and camera performances all at their highest level. It really blew us away when we saw it all put together for the first time.
I mean, it's doing incredibly well. Like, I can't believe that it's charted so high in traditional charts. Like,
oh God, no,
it's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's really amazing.
So let's talk about Bruno then.
Love it.
Like a segue.
Yeah, amazing.
Good. Like it.
What I find fascinating, is he's gone missing this whole time, but he's, spoilers, I'm sure most people have seen it at this stage, is that he's just hanging around the walls. And it's very akin to, you said about your co-director there, her play Feathers and Teeth, the little monsters hiding under the floorboards. It's even akin to something like Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, everything's kind of set in this house. But how did you balance that so it has a levity and it's just not creepy that he's just hanging around the house?
We had many discussions about making sure it doesn't get creepy. Actually, that's something that we really, really paid attention to. I think first off, you have the extreme luxury benefit of John Leguizamo, who is just so good, and his performance in this and our expectations of this character, and then how sweet he is, but broken, and so immediately I think can we trust him or not? I think immediately you just have a good feeling about this guy the second you actually meet him for real. I'll say it's funny. I was thinking about the other day, like, can you imagine working on this concept for like 3 years and he's behind the walls the whole time? And then I saw Parasite. I was like, oh no, like, we're gonna have to change it, or like, what's going on? But luckily, or like, oh, we're gonna stick with it. But like, that was from early on the idea that, I think that family is, for many people, so important. And even when you have moments of fracture and break, you kind of don't want to leave them or to start a different life. And so the notion of Bruno having always been there was something that was in our story for a very, very, very long time. And then to your point, it was, how do we get that across in a way that feels emotional? That's really about wanting an emotional connection. So that moment where Mirabel looks at that little crack in the wall and realizes, oh my God, this room's next to the dinner table, and he has made his own little dinner table so he can have dinner with his family every night, and probably has done that for 10 years straight. Like, that was such an important moment to build towards. So you really get the sense of how much this guy yearns to be with them, but just can't figure it out.
Yeah, that moment, that table, Jared and Shreese had written very, very cleverly, that little apartment of his being right next to the dining room where the family gathers for meals. That's where they'd be together the most. That's where he could be close to his family, yet keep his family safe and stay secret. And Mark Kennedy did these beautiful boards for it. And the first time we saw that little drawing of his little plate drawn on the table, you go, oof. So even like a little black and white drawing can get you like that. Yeah. And I've seen people online. I saw a beautiful illustrator who did an illustration of him sitting at the table, but with his back to you with this light streaming. And it's amazing how, that's how we find those tent poles. Like when groups of people, like teams, watch these films. And if it gets us all, we go, okay, that's staying. That's gonna stay in there.
So that was like an idea that you guys had written, but the board artist kind of got it across correctly.
Yeah, I find that that's where our the entire story team, those were all the board artists, they're just such masters at getting across complex ideas or emotional ideas in the simplest way possible. Like the best board artists, I find, like, it's like Byron said, it's a simple black and white line drawing. There's not a whole lot, but to be able to convey those things in very simple terms really puts a target on, okay, we're aiming towards this moment. And Mark is one of the best at it, actually, because he is super, super hilarious, and then can flip it to that. That scene goes from like shenanigans to like, oh my God, in like 30 seconds, if not less. So it's a very, very brilliant mind to be able to pull that off.
I heard a rumor that Bruno was originally called Oscar. Is that true? And you changed it to Bruno.
That is true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, he used to come into the movie much, much earlier. And he was this sort of, his physical type was very different. He was this big, jolly, round guy. And he was very, very different. And it almost was so compelling that early that it took over the movie. It kind of pushed all the other family members out of the movie. It became Mirabel and Bruno's buddy story. And from the beginning, we knew we didn't want to fall into that trope, because we do that so often, which is great. It's a really effective way to tell stories. But we knew for a family, a broad, diverse family, we needed to give everyone space and room to affect Mirabel and Mirabel to affect them. And then, do you want to talk about the Oscar change, the name change?
Yeah. So it's twofold. One is you always have to vet names legally to make sure you can use them in a story. And there must have been a certain number of Oscar Madrigals in that area that made it difficult. I'd say the other reason to change it was originally he was called Uncle Oscar. We didn't use Tio. That came later. And so Uncle Oscar, that alliteration felt good, but Tio Oscar didn't feel exactly right. And obviously we had a legal issue. So I remember we needed to change it, and knowing that he was going to have a song about him, I remember sending this list of names that would make sense from the region to Lin. There's like 5 different names. And Bruno was on that list, and immediately he's like, it's Bruno. And I didn't know why he was like so definitive immediately. And I was like, oh, great. But like, that was real quick. And then, within like a week or two, that song came out, and Bruno, no, and using the no's, we're like, got it. Okay, so as soon as he heard that name, he was like, I'm going to use that. He didn't tell us that when he was like, this is the one to circle. But that turned out to be, a great shift. And I can't imagine any other way.
Genius. Genius. I like the idea that you guys are so aware of the tropes that you're falling into. Did that come from like the length of development time, or because I think you guys were working on this for about 5 years, wasn't it? That's quite usually out like a year or two longer than most other animated films. Like, did that grow from that, or is it something you kind of set out straight away and you're like, okay, let's brush the table of these tropes?
Well, one of the great things the studio does and has done for like the last decade is give us time to iterate and work on these things. And so I think that's what happens always. The first pass at anything is always very tropey. It's like, oh, this feels like this movie, or that character feels exactly like that, or oh, did you watch that show? Because that's what this feels like. But it just feels like you have to give yourself time to make characters specific, and then to kind of really talk about them for months, if not years. Like for characters like Mirabel, whose character is so specific. Like, we talked for years about who she is and what her want is. Like, does she want a gift? Does she not want a gift? How does she want to be there for her family? And then a lot of those questions didn't get answered for us until Stephanie Beatriz showed up and started doing the voice. And that informed like a whole layer of her that we couldn't know before that point. And then when Lin brings in his musical past, like for Luisa, that was a huge moment for us, because we knew she was going to be the sister that carried everything and stuff. But he had a very specific take on that with a reggaeton song that he brought in, and how comic it was, and the fact that she could be so strong and yet so vulnerable at the same time. So that informed it too. But I think the long story short, it's the time that we're given to iterate and talk about these things, because we know the tropes. We love movies. We love tropes in some cases. Sometimes leaning into them is very handy. Yeah. But the audience is so smart now. Everyone's seen so much. Even kids like 5 are like, nope,
they're too smart.
Your act 3 is flat, they'll say. And so we have to really like keep on our toes about this stuff.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing that really helped us is, so we screened the movie about 8 times internally as we're experimenting and trying different things out. And in our first screening, it was a little bit more of a quest, meaning it was still in the house, but sort of Mirabel had to find objects within the house. And so she was actively seeking out things in a way that was a bit more of like a standard sort of journey like that. And like Byron was saying, Bruno at that time was sort of telling her places to go. We switched it from that to more of a mystery from screening 1 to screening 2. And the idea of it being a mystery locked at screening 2. What's interesting about that in terms of these tropes is there are not very many musical mysteries. It's these two things are almost never combined. Like I can't so there's no template or trope to use for a musical mystery. And so a lot of that we had to kind of figure it out, and it was kind of new territory and honestly scary, because you couldn't say like, oh, well, here's how they did it in this other musical mystery, because that didn't exist. And so it was really fun for us to figure those things out.
Going down the dank, scary, dark tunnel, just like, oh, I'm not quite sure.
Hope it works out.
This will work. Wait, yeah.
Talking about Mirabel, then obviously she, speaking of tropes and everything, this is a girl set apart, a non-magical girl in a magical family. But I really found that you guys really set her apart so well, not just in her design, in her movement, in her music, in her perspective, everything like that. I found it so fascinating. If you could just talk through the process of her as well.
Well, I mean, just to start, that the idea of the non-magical child and a magical family, that was very, very early. That was in the first couple of months that Jared and I had been talking, and we know that we have something when those early pitches catch someone. Like we'll pitch this a lot. We'll kind of like bring people in. We'll say, this is what we're thinking, and that idea really hit people in the heart from the get-go. And we're thinking it's a lot because so many people can relate to that. So many people have judgment of themselves, and they're comparing themselves to others, not only in the world, but also in their family, and in the family that should be there to support them the most, or they feel like these are the people I'm closest to, but the idea that they don't see me or my value at all, and I don't see the value in myself, was really core. And so that landed even before we knew her name. We knew that she was going to be the central character, and that whole flip, like usually we have sort of one empowered, gifted character who's changing the world and kind of is the chosen one, so to speak. And she is in a way, but sort of in reverse. You know, she needed to be who she is for her family, but that was compelling. Do you want to talk about her name, Jared, or do you want to talk?
Sure.
About
Well, sort of going off what you said a second ago. The other thing that we really thought about her from like a psychological standpoint, meaning if this actually happened to you, what kind of person would you become as a result of that? And so she would probably be someone who always felt a little insecure, someone who probably, hangs out in her bedroom by herself, talking to the house a little bit. And so some of the quirks that you see are a result of the psychology that would come out of, someone having gone through something like this. So that was really, really fun. I think the trick was, how do you make a character that feels like that doesn't feel like, look at the quirky character, right? And so I think that the relatable part was something that was very, very critical for us. I think that's where Charisse, who will happily say, felt very much like herself at that point in her life. So that was really great to lean on. And then Stephanie, of course, came in, and she has just such an amazing ability to be hilarious and emotional and vulnerable and weird and just kind of in her own head a little bit, which is so great for this character, and just letting that exist that way. And then, of course, the name Mirabel itself, Mira is in her name because in Spanish it's look, and this movie's all about perspective and what you see. Even the fact that Mirabel has glasses is to draw attention to how she sees things. That's very intentional from the beginning. Like early character design, we knew that was going to be part of it for sure.
Well, Jared, I just off of what Jared mentioned, which is kind of an interesting part of our process, is really thinking about not just the part of the character's life that's showing up on screen, but to think about the history of the character. That was very critical with Bruno. We thought, if you're a 5-year-old kid and you're gifted with the ability to see the future, but the future is not always what people want. It's frequently not. And so to have that burden, what would that do to you? What would that do to you as a child? And how do you deal with that as you get older? And how does that push you out of the favor of the people around you? And how does that bring in suspicion? And so that's another reason why it was hard for him not to take over a big chunk of the movie, because he's so tragic and so vulnerable in such a way. And so that's also why they bond so well. Like when they meet, these two weirdos, as they say in the movie, kind of getting together, they both have like a lot of baggage from this family and from this experience. And that's where a lot of that strength comes from in their relationship.
I mean, I guess like doing a film like this, writing about the family and you taking these deep psychological dives must have really made you guys take a long, hard look at yourselves, like what do you, it must be so hard to find that out, like to just sit there and just learn about yourself consistently over 5 years and then put it in a film.
We know a lot about each other.
We do. I'd say it's honestly one of the joys of this job is that any story we tell is sort of therapy for us, and you actually had the extreme benefit of doing that, of spending some time and being introspective and like, why do I think what I think, and why am I the person I am, and these other people in your life. And so I mean, some of that's hard, but also some of that is really kind of cathartic, and you realize that you're a product of many things, and that's okay. And so I think, especially for a character like Mirabel, who has these insecurities and sees these phenomenal people around her, and she can't really see the value in herself. You know, I think certainly that's something I deal with a lot, but I think a lot of people do. And I think the more real we tried to make that struggle for her, I think the more it resonated for us personally, and then felt a little bit more universal.
I think we learned about ourselves. I think we learned about our families, just like uncovering these layers of our own histories, because I don't know that the public understands that a lot of this isn't actually producing what you see on screen, but it is sort of that psychology and that introspection that happens for those years before, because it is like we're building these movies from scratch, like you know, Zootopia was built from scratch. This movie was it's just the story didn't exist in the world before this team put it together. And we're also learning along the way, because it's set in Colombia. We have our Colombian Trust and our friends in Colombia who are saying, like, we want the story to say something like this. What's a way that is specific to Colombia that we could say that, or what's the music that, or the dance or the tradition from the Colombian culture that would be appropriate for this, or that would inform it and make it way better. And it's that specificity that really led to that universality. Like the more our Colombian friends talked about their families, they're like, oh, we have those same moments. We have those same roles that show up in our own families. And it brought, I think, all of our families closer together. I think we recognized, especially as you're saying, during the pandemic and the isolation and being kind of like locked away, how much of a burden people are carrying, like seeing it like literally in front of our faces. And I think there's an appreciation, there's a guy outside my window, of that strength is really incredible. It's a leaf blower. Sorry, everybody, like this. See, home drama.
I'm really curious about then, okay, so Colombia is obviously very rich and various, but you then guys have to represent that on screen. And one big part that I know a lot of people love in animation is hair and obviously what people wear as well. That must have been quite a challenge for the kind of technical team because it looks really, really good. It looks unbelievably good. Even the hairs on the skin and everything. Yeah,
I mean, I think, again, that goes to being surrounded by people that are at the very, very top of their game. You know, I think that it's interesting. There's no one research period on our movies. We don't research and then we're done and then we make a movie. It is constant. It's research is the whole 5 years, and some of these amazing relationships that we made with our cultural consultants, that is throughout. I think what was really exciting is, I think from a standpoint of building the story, I think you have to be like intellectually correct, and then you also have to be emotionally correct. And so, you know, early on, when we took that research trip to Colombia 3 years ago, it really instilled in us this feeling of that place and how tactile we wanted it to feel. We wanted people to feel like they were there, and for the people that you meet in the story to feel real. And so, the way that the entire design teams translated that to bring in all of those different fabrics and textures, you know, every costume you see in the movie is inspired by things that you would find in Colombia, but different locations. We wanted that to feel real. What's important there is you can't use the same fabric universally in all those places, because some places are warm and some places are cold. And so the fabric had to feel correct for that. The way it's stitched had to feel correct for that. And then to your point, you know, Colombia is this amazing melting pot where you have Afro-Colombian influence, and you have indigenous influence, and you have the European influence. All those are intermingled. And that means that there's a huge diversity of the way that people look. And we really, really, from the beginning, wanted to make sure that was represented correctly. So we had many experts help us with that, on top of the fact that our design teams have reached a point where they can be really specific in terms of, like, how do you literally build a follicle of hair to be correct, and how does that feel? And that's something that took a lot of time and care. But I will also say it's something that entire team was extremely happy and excited to dive into. It was one of those exciting challenges, and something that I think that they really, really, you can see it on the screen. Like, it's mind-boggling. I can't believe what they were able to accomplish, but it's because they really wanted to get that right.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, it was just, I think, you know, Colombia being so, I was going to say the same thing about the hair really blew me away, especially on Felix and Peppa's side of the family, because you have that beautiful Afro-Colombian hair, but it's different on Felix and on Antonio and on Camilo and on Dolores, and then even in how part, you know, with Mirabel's own hair, sort of the history of that family and that mixing is there to be seen, and like the, an indigenous part of the family that kind of comes in with a bit of Isabella, and that was something that was really made a huge impression on us when we were in Colombia, and how proud Colombians are of that, the fact that they all feel like one big blended family, and not to hide that at all, but to celebrate it. And Jared's absolutely right. Like, our teams didn't roll their eyes at that, or they didn't say, oh, that's too much work. They dove in, they did extra work. And I think when they brought it to us, they were so proud of it. And Liliana, our Afro-Colombian consultant, was so talking about the importance of natural Afro-Colombian hair. And so all of this representation is so important. And that's where all of this pays off. Like, when you see the public see themselves in the movie where they haven't before, on screen, it's just a remarkable reward. So that's a huge boost for our teams that put so much of their own lives into this. So that's a huge reward.
So you guys have spent a lot of time around each other then, and one of the things tell me all your secrets about each other. No,
sure. Let me get my database out.
My notebook.
One of the things about this movie is obviously when someone discovers a gift, they get a door. What would you say is on the other person's door then?
Oh my gosh.
I can speak to what would be on you saying. You want me to tell you what would be on Byron's door?
Absolutely, yeah.
I would say you would think it would be a trombone, but I think it's something different. Yeah. I think that more than any person I've ever worked with, that Byron has this unbelievable knack to bring out the very best in everyone that he comes into contact with. I think that I've literally never seen any other human being like. He cares a lot about everyone, and he can see, the superstar in everybody, and even when you can't see for yourself. And so I think that he has this uncanny ability to do that. And I think that you see that in every project he works on. I think there's a reason why those movies resonate and feel special, is because he has made those entire teams feel as special as they are.
Oh, that's so nice.
No pressure. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I've known Jared. I met Jared probably 11 years ago, 12 years. So it's been a decade or more. And I thought when I first met him, even talking to him for 10 minutes, of like, this guy is a long lost brother. Like, we had so much in common, and we just really got each other. And I gotta say, seeing how he has been for his family, seeing how he has been for the studio, like, it very much like a rock of the family. Like, Jared supports everyone around him with his strength, his resilience, his humor, and his heart. He has such a good heart. And so I think that's why, when you meet someone, you go, I like that guy. I've heard 2 words from him, but there's something about him. He's just like a solid person. So some people are just solid human beings through and through. And I know how much he's had to handle over the last 10 years, and it's been a lot, and everybody has. But I think some people are just extraordinary at weathering that and keeping a positive demeanor and giving through a sense of love, and never making anyone who's asking for help feel like it's too much. So I would say, like, definitely in my life, Jared's been a big solid anchor rock for me for this whole decade. And so I really, I treasure his friendship. And that's a very good question. You're the first person to ask that question. I think it's a very good perceptive question. So.
Thank you very much.
Really
Cole, your door would be the best interview questions ever. You would just be like, have a brilliant halo around yourself with like a.
Well, I'm honored. I must draw it now. I was just going to say, no, it was such a pleasure to talk to you guys. I was very excited to do it. Zootopia for me was one of the first films that I saw from Disney of that era, where I was like, wow, these are telling something different that I want to hear. It's something that truly resonates with people, and it speaks to both your points of, like, emotional intelligence. So I've got to say, it was really a nice pleasure to get to talk to you guys.
Oh, thank you so much, Cole.
Talk to you in the next 5 years after the next one. But listen, congratulations on everything with ENCANTO. It has got huge success, and that's obviously due to you guys, your team, and all the best with it.
Oh, thank you, Cole.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so
great
much. To talk to you.
Yeah, anytime.
You too.